Hello and welcome to another episode of the Paperstac Podcast. I am Brett Berkey, and there was no Rick Allen today. So Rick Allen is not here. Instead, I am welcomed with a friend of mine named Nathan Turner, the Canadian note guy, and he's been one of my buddies for a number of years. Gosh,
Yeah.
been a long time. I realized I was talking with somebody yesterday. I didn't really technically get into the note space, but I was thinking, damn, it's been a decade almost because it will be a decade
Not that long.
this year. 2014.
Nice.
I mean, I wasn't buying those, but I started to get in with Rick and doing all this stuff. And, probably took me about 6 months to understand how's it work? TJ with the whiteboard would draw diagrams and kind of, this is how it works. So you can just buy someone's mortgage. Like, you know what I mean? So yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so today we're doing my first note, which was kind of a nice little segment into the understanding. So first we want to you've been around. So some people might not know who you are, but just give me a short intro of, who's Nathan Turner and why they're going to be interested in this awesome episode. So
Sure. Yeah, I'm Nathan Turner. So I'm the Canadian note guy because I live in Canada. So I live just outside of Calgary, Alberta, but everything I do is in the US. So I get that asked that all the time. Do you ever buy notes in Canada? No, I don't. I think maybe you guys sent me one like 5 years ago, but I think I've seen 3 or 4 notes in Canada ever over my span. They're just not common. It's just not something that's done in Canada. So it's really rare. But yeah, everything I do is in the States.
we actually had Cal Ewing on. I don't know who Cal is, but he's in
Yeah.
he's in Canada as well, just to basically understand for people that are investing from outside the U.S. how to actually do it. Because we have, people ask, I'm like, yeah, well, I don't know, but then, he kind of explained to get the bank account, but I'm sure that's kind of what you have with that same idea of there's partner banks, I guess, where they have them in Canada and in the United States now, but I guess back in the day, it wasn't like that.
Even better. So now there are a couple of banks out there that will open a US bank account for a Canadian business, like using your Canadian business number. So I need to touch base with him because I thought I told him that already, but maybe not.
Oh,
But
wow.
that makes such a difference. And I'll tell you, the biggest difference is sending ACH payments. So like if I've got a guy that cuts the grass or something like that, then I can easily just send him an ACH. And I mean, it doesn't sound like a big deal, but it's huge actually.
I could see that.
So that makes a big difference.
Because you would have to, do they have Venmo and stuff like that in Canada? Gosh, I sound like such an idiot, but
Sort of. I can use, so PayPal,
PayPal.
that one I can do across the border, but it's a pain because anytime it sends me money, it automatically converts it to Canadian. I'm like, no, I want it in US dollars, but yeah. So kind of, but it's a pain.
Interesting.
I connect PayPal to my US credit card, and that's how I can also make some payments sometimes.
That's interesting.
But
Yeah, that's smart.
it's kind of a pain.
Yeah, that sounds like a pain. That would be tough. Huh. Interesting. So yeah, so you're the Canadian note guy, and today we were talking about my first note. And so
Yeah.
I thought we had you on here, but we didn't. We had you on for your worst note experience, and your best, or it was like a series on that, like where it's like, tell us about your worst win or your best win or lose is what it's called. It was either your best win or your biggest loss.
Yeah.
But we didn't ever learn about your first note. So just go ahead and jump right in and tell us what was your first note?
First note. So before I bought any notes, I did some origination. So this is before Dodd-Frank came out and all that good stuff. So me and my old business partner, Corey, we had a portfolio of properties where we were told to just kind of do what we could. So we, as a couple of Canadian guys, we kind of figured we'd invented seller financing. And so we were selling these houses on terms. We didn't even know they were called notes, like nothing. We were calling them contracts. Like we didn't have any idea. So we were just doing that. But so that was my first kind of experience with notes. But my first note purchase, that would have been 2010.
Oh, wow.
From Jack Krupe.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Back in the day. Yeah. And I was talking to him on the phone. We had met somewhere, I think at a conference. And then I was talking to him on the phone and he said he had these notes and he had a package of 3 notes for $10,000. I'm like, each? And he's like, no, total. I'm like, are you kidding?
First position, second position?
No, all first.
Performing?
All first.
No, not performing.
Yeah. Three different loans on 3 different properties in Columbus, Ohio.
Wow.
And all, non-performing, of course.
Okay, non-performing. I was about to say, I was like, wow. Okay.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
definitely non-performing. Back in those days,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. Everything
that
was not
was
performing.
it. So yeah, I bought. I figured that's a $10,000 experiment. I'm willing to
Yeah.
try. I had learned about non-performing notes and I'd heard about them, and I figured I had a pretty good handle on what to do with one once I had it.
Right.
So it was $10,000 experiment. Figured that was worth it. Um, Two out of the three. So my what I was looking to do at the time was take back the property and then sell it on terms.
Mm.
Do that same kind of program that I'd been doing. So that was my game plan. So I contacted all three of the owners of the property, found out that two of them lived in Columbus still. I was able to track down their addresses and phone numbers and all that stuff from their collateral docs. So I called them, figured out that both of them had bought these properties as income properties
Mm.
on a ninja loan where they didn't have to
Mm.
do anything to qualify, but they just bought these properties. Both of them were sitting empty. So I went down to Columbus. I took a friend with me and we went and knocked on the door and I said, so I'm here not to collect on your mortgage. I'm here to take over the property. And I said, so if you will sign the property over to me, I'll wipe out the mortgage. And both of them were like, are you kidding? Really? Yeah, okay, done. Where do I sign? So I'm
That's
like,
awesome.
that worked well. The third one, that was the tricky one where the owner lived actually in Arizona,
Mm.
and the property, it was near the Ohio State University, but it had had a fire.
Oh.
So it was mostly just a shell.
Mm.
So my idea, same kind of thing. My idea was I wanted to take back the property, renovate it into like student housing where I could have
Yeah.
like 5 or 6 bedrooms and then have that as a student housing property.
Right.
Um, the trick was that there was a $10,000 property tax lien on the property, and they had actually started foreclosure. So the dawning moment for me was when that kind of all came to a head, and I went, wait a second, I'm not actually responsible for paying that 10 grand. So we on those other two properties, one we had just sold outright, doubled our money. We sold it for like $20,000, which was it was a junkie house on Junkie Street in Columbus, but I doubled my money. So
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
And then the other one we ended up renting it out for it was either $500 or $600 a month. So I had income from that one. So I'm like, this third one is really whatever it is, it is.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of like I say, that dawning moment where I'm like, oh, okay, so I don't actually own the property. I'm not actually responsible for the taxes. I don't have to pay them. If I don't, I don't get the property, but the property itself needed a ton of work. It needed a lot of attention. And I already made my money back on these other ones. So in the end, we just let it go. And we're like, okay, tax guys, there you go. There's your property. And so they
That,
took it over. And then that was kind of the end of that. But for me, that was just the light bulb moment of like, oh, that's how notes work.
that's
I don't
interesting.
own the property. Wow, that's kind of cool.
I mean, you had no education.
Very little. So I had taken one class where back then, I took the class in 2009. And at the time, that was just right on the very edge of non-performing notes kind of becoming a thing. So it was still relatively unknown. So the people that were teaching were more teaching about going out and getting seller finance notes and having like a performing portfolio, which
Wow.
is fine and that's a great strategy. But this other thing was coming up, and it ended up being something that I did for many years after. But it was brand new.
That's interesting. And then from there, was it just like game on? And also to another back question, those first couple that you're doing seller finance, were you doing that in Canada or were you doing it in America?
No, all in the States.
Wow. Okay. Oh,
Yeah.
interesting. And so, and then how'd you even get into real estate? I mean, how'd you like that just
So that was it was my old partner. He had networked into a group of investors. So they had bought these properties in April of 2007. So if you remember that back, that
ah,
was like right at the height of the market.
yeah.
And the plan was they were just going to flip out that whole portfolio out to another investment group. So it's 60 properties, mostly centered in the Midwest. And That deal fell through. So by the fall of 2008, they were like, oh, shoot, now what do we do?
Mhm.
So that's where they kind of came to us. And he's like, well, I've got some real estate experience. And he called me up and he's like, hey, do you want to help me on this? I'm like, yeah, sure. So that was the start. No operating budget, no nothing. It's just like, do what you can with this stuff. Okay, go.
That's such a blessing because you were getting into real estate at the most ideal time when everyone else was getting out.
Yeah.
Because everyone else was like, "Oh crap," and they're stuck upside down. You're like, "What's going on over here?"
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
like, "What, I'm gonna buy one of these things for 10 G's? I can do that."
Yeah. Yeah. So it was nuts. So like I say, we made out very well on those ones. But to me, that was the biggest thing was, well, and then the other two, I was getting cash for keys. And so, I mean, what I hadn't thought of before was that I was solving somebody else's problem. I was like, I just want the property, So if you guys can just sign it over, cool, then we'll be done. But I hadn't thought
You
it
go
all
to
the way
sign it
through.
over. How did you know? Was that something you learned to sign it over?
Yeah, yeah. I learned about getting a deed in lieu of foreclosure. So I'm like, okay, yeah, that's what I'll do because I want the property.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's
and
interesting. Yeah, I guess I think
good
at that
enough.
that time, any investor who had a property that was definitely in that situation, you were they were happy to see you because they're like, oh my God, please take them off my hands. Because they probably had like 5 or 6 other ones that they had to go through foreclosure and they just got screwed on them. But like, if
Yeah,
someone like, look, I'll
and
just sign it over to me.
yeah,
I'll go like this, walk away. They're like, done. Yeah.
and letters and phone calls and stress about just like, shoot,
Oh
what do
yeah.
I do with this? And
Yeah.
the values had all gone down, so they're feeling like, well, I can't even sell it.
Yeah.
Yep. And it
What an
was,
opportunity. Yeah, but that was a great time for you to get in. Wow. That's
yeah,
I didn't know you were in that long. That's like at the start of when, and then from there, golly, you must have been like, the world is my oyster. Like at this point, you're probably like,
totally.
dude, yeah, because that nobody else was really doing that.
No, it was pretty brand new. And so then I started looking around and I'm like, shoot, this is great. So we kind of decided Columbus, Ohio, that was going to be like our market.
Okay.
So anytime I was talking to anybody who's selling notes, I'm like, I buy in Columbus, Ohio. Whatever you got in Columbus, send it to me. And so that was it. We kind of went from there. And so I bought a bunch of stuff in Columbus. A few years later, a couple of companies came out, started selling contracts for deed.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, that's exactly what I was doing back in Ohio when I was creating notes, when I was doing the originations. And in Ohio, it's called a land contract.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I was doing. So when people started selling these land contracts and contracts for deed, I'm like, yeah, bring them on. So I bought a bunch of those because a lot of people wouldn't, because they're like, what are these things? How do they even work? I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
don't even ask. It's good. It's cool. Don't even worry about it. I
They're
got it.
difficult. They're difficult. It's like, yeah, don't worry about it. It's really hard to figure out. Don't worry. Just
Yeah.
leave it.
You
Kind of like
don't
my
want
daughter.
those. Yeah.
She'll say like, we'll be out to eat and she's having like she'll have ice cream. She'll get ice cream and they'll be like, can I have a bite? She's like, it's really bitter. You won't like it. It's super bitter, but it's kind of like you did the super bitter play of, oh,
Exactly.
you don't want to get into it. It's really
You
bitter.
don't want these. They're a headache, man. No, don't.
I'll take care of it
Just
for you.
stay away.
That's
Yeah.
nice. That's cool, man. And then so at what time did you ever start to buy and hold and then actually have these notes turn performing and keep, or did you always take back the property, turn into rentals, or did you actually hold notes?
It was anything that I bought, any of the non-performing stuff that I bought, it was always with the intention of reselling. So if it was a non-performing loan on whatever property, if I was going to either take back the property and sell the house, or do a seller finance deal and sell it on terms, or I was going to just rehab the note, get the person paying again, and sell that note as a reperformer. And I'll tell you, like, again, going back in the day there, uh, at least over 90%, 95% of the time when we foreclosed, it was a vacant property. That was
Mhm.
extremely common. So we got that a lot.
Yeah.
So I ended up taking back a bunch of property and selling it, or creating a new note and selling that, or rehabbing the note, getting the payment again, selling that. So I did that for a long, long time. And it was actually just last year where I'm like, no, I got to change things up a little bit. So we put together a fund. Now we're just buying performing notes. And it's kind of full circle for me because now I'm buying seller finance notes performing. And I'm like, man, that's exactly what I used to do.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
I'm looking for me 15 years ago.
That's true. Yeah, no, it's definitely the non-performing is not there as much, it seems like too. It's like you don't have
Yeah.
those opportunities like you used to. That's very
Yeah,
interesting.
and the pricing's all out of whack. So we'll hang on.
Yeah.
We'll do non-performing when it makes sense again, but for now it just doesn't really.
No, I've seen that. And we talked to some people at IMN where I'm like, maybe we'll see some more of those. It kind of seems like it might be coming, but then everyone's the boy that sounds that cries wolf. Like, oh yeah, they're coming, they're
Yeah.
coming. It's like we've been saying that. Everyone's been saying that for a couple of years, but I don't. I will win. But whatever. It will when it will. That's
And that's a
interesting.
tough one because I really 2019, we were all waiting for something to happen for the next wave. And so we
Well,
were all kind of expecting something. So when COVID hit, we're like, oh yeah, here it is. This is it. Defaults like crazy. Here we go. And then instead, government pumped in a ton of cash and just kind of kept everything afloat. And was that the right move at the time? Probably. But I think long term, we're gonna see something happen with that because that it's just not sustainable.
yeah, so on that note, I saw some stuff where it was like that, and I got a large tape of notes, and I don't know how it ended up on my desk, but it was like it was a couple hundred million. I was looking, I was like, oh wow, it was all the default dates for 2020, March to May.
Mhm.
I was like, wow. I was like, that's very telling because it was all the people who probably couldn't make the payment, but then there's also people that just they didn't make the payment because they didn't want to. And then it's like now it comes back around where that's been sold off and the rates have changed now to like
Yeah.
9 or 10%. You were at 3%. You're in a stuck situation. So there's that weird limbo going on where there's a couple sites I follow. I'm seeing some of these stuff, some of the tapes coming out, and you're like, that's a big one. That's a big
Yeah.
one. Like
Yeah.
that was Tuesday. That was the next week. It's like, geez, these are things that are just starting to pop out. It's like, wow. So maybe we'll see something interesting. So you're about just fine
That is
performing
interesting.
stuff now.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Interesting. Okay, cool. That's a pretty cool story, man. I didn't know you were that long. You're like
Yeah.
I mean, what was the first conference you went to? Geez, it wouldn't have even Note School wasn't even going or Note Expo. I'm sorry, wasn't even
No, it was noteworthy in
noteworthy.
Louisiana, in down in New Orleans.
Oh wow, it's
So that was
interesting.
my first conference. And I mean, I had just we'd started creating these notes and I learned a little bit. I'd taken a class at that point. And then I go into this conference and there's like a couple of hundred people there all talking about what I was doing. I was like, people know what this is? No
Wow.
way. So it
Yeah,
was just like blew my mind. I'm like, man, I started meeting people right away and
that's
just
cool.
started making those relationships that are still around today. It's crazy.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Cool, man. Well, I like that. That's a really cool story. So we always say, if you could go back and you're telling the person that's starting out now,
Yeah.
they're on Paperstac, they're looking at notes, and they're kind of like, should I buy one? Kind of should I dip my foot in the pool? I need to evaluate everything. What's your advice to somebody that is just starting out? We always ask, what's your advice? What would you say to somebody that's just getting started? Like best piece of advice you can give.
I think very first, make sure you got some education. If you're coming from the real estate world, great. So did all of us, but it's not real estate. It's real estate related. And yes, the real estate matters, but that's not what we're buying and selling. We're buying and selling financing, paper. So make sure you understand the rules behind that, how it works, all of that kind of thing. What are the different regulations in different states? Yeah, all of that stuff. RMLO, CFPB, there's a lot that goes into it. So just because you've done real estate, don't assume that you can just walk into notes and start buying stuff. So I've made my first piece of advice is just make sure you're getting educated. And I don't teach anything, but I'm just saying,
No, that's
make
smart.
sure
I mean,
find those
that's
guys.
most people say something like that. It's either that or just do it. But it's like, yeah, without having the education, you can a lot of mistakes you could make. And I mean, I'm not gonna, quote Eddie. I mean, say like Eddie Speed did, but he said something about you can't bake a cake twice. Like he has the same saying where he's like, once it's set up, it's set up. That's it.
Yeah.
That's the way it is. That's
Yeah.
interesting. Okay, cool. Well, I will be seeing you in about a month. Oh, month and 4 days.
Yeah. It's coming up quick.
What is coming
Coming
up?
up quick.
Tell us about it.
Yeah, Diversified Mortgage Expo. So we took that over last year. This is our second year running it. It's the ninth annual for the conference. So next year we'll have to plan something cool for 10th annual. I don't know. We'll see. A cake or
Nice.
something. I don't know, something.
That'd
But
be cool.
really looking forward to it. It's all about networking. It's all about relationships. So it makes such a difference. Video calls and phone calls and all that kind of stuff, that's good. But man, oh man, oh man, it just makes such a difference to get right in front of people and shaking hands, going for dinner.
Oh, I get
There's
it.
no substitute.
No, I'm totally there with you. I will say like last year when we went to it, I will say it drew a different crowd, more seller finance focused. It was, you guys had a different crowd, which is good. Of course I love the other conferences, but I was like, oh, this is neat. It's a different, I don't know if it because of where it's located. I kind of feel like sometimes that can be the thing. Like, cause
A little bit.
I met Renard from Baltimore and we really hit it off, but
Yeah,
I had never seen him at like Note Expo or never seen him at like IMN West or Noteworthy, but he's been in the space a long time. And I was like,
interesting.
it's like the
Yeah,
Northeast will pull to like Nashville, but it won't like Texas is way down there or something. I don't know if they'll just unless and then of course now I'm like, I'm not going to California like Dana Point anymore. Like, I mean,
yeah.
it's pretty, but I'm like, that's a trip, man. And
That
so
was part of it. So it's in Nashville, and that was part of the decision. We wanted something pretty central, something that was easy to get to from either coast. Part of it for me, I used to live in Montreal, and then
mhm.
I would go to like Vegas or California with the 3 hour time difference. I'm like, oh,
Oh
that is a
geez.
killer. So I
Yeah,
wanted something either on central or mountain time zone, something fairly central in the country, easy to get to. So that was all of, I've been to a lot of conferences over the years, and so took pieces of all of that and went, no, this is, if I was going to do it, here's how I would do it. And so that's what we did.
that's good. Yeah, no, for us, it is Central Time Zone Nashville, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, so it's just an hour for us, which is great. So that was good. All right, man. Any place they can find you somewhere online?
definitely go to diversifiedmortgageexpo.com. There's contact info there. If you're more somebody who's looking to do some passive investing, there's actually a link on Diversified Mortgage Expo over to my fund website, Earnest Investing, or you can just go there. But I'm reachable either one of those places. I'm happy to chat. I like to talk about notes. So anytime, feel free to ring me up.
Awesome, Nathan. It's been awesome. I look forward to seeing you in a month. Having
For sure.
dinners, maybe throwing some axes. So,
Awesome.
all right, man. See ya.
Okay. Bye.